Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Good afternoon, friends. Welcome to this final talk for this short retreat. We'll be going through the talk, and once that's done, we'll go right into the Q&A and see if we can finish off the questions before the end of the retreat. So today, the first thing we're going to talk about is getting a little bit away from the abstract and talking about metta off the cushion. Then we're going to talk about metta in relation to the Noble Eightfold Path. We're going to talk about the benefits of metta as listed by the Buddha and the protection of metta. We're going to go into an interesting little sutta called the Simile of the Saw, and then we're going to end it with making the practice your own. So, we begin with metta off the cushion. As I've been saying this whole retreat, metta is meant to be lived. It's meant to become part of your livelihood. It's meant to be done not just on the cushion, but in every interaction, in every thought that we have. Of course, that's the ideal. Nobody's, well, unless you're an arhat maybe, but I don't think anybody in this room is able to do that constantly, 24/7 through 65. So that's why we practice this. This is, if you, like I said at the beginning of this, by this point, if you're not all blissed out and metta for humanity, it's okay. You're not alone. So what ways can we practice metta off the cushion? Well, as an honorable mention, I did want to mention the sutta that I talked about yesterday, Subduing Hatred. I can't say enough how important that sutta is. And this is the sutta where the Buddha's giving you advice as to what happens when aversion, anger, hatred towards a specific person arises. If you remember, the first thing was to practice metta, practice karuna, compassion, practice equanimity. If that doesn't work, you try to avoid and ignore the person, and if that doesn't work, you recognize that they are responsible for their own actions. This is one thing I did want to mention just briefly, is that in the suttas, that stock phrase that I told you guys that the Buddha uses dozens and dozens and dozens of times. The first quarter, second quarter, third quarter, fourth quarter, above, below, all around. That phrase, almost always he doesn't just say that with metta. He says one abides pervading the first quarter, second quarter, third quarter, fourth quarter, with a mind imbued with compassion, with equanimity, with why am I missing that? Yeah, I was trying to remember the English. Appreciative joy. There you go. So it's not only just that just metta. The Buddha is teaching us that we can use these methods for also the three Brahma Viharas. So in addition to that, the next thing that I highly suggest is the practice of patience. Patience is extremely important. As a matter of fact, they say that patience is the best meditation. When we develop patience, when we practice patience, when somebody does something that's annoying, or the train's late, or something happens that is not meeting our expectations, then we're okay with it. We have patience for these situations, understanding that life does not go how we plan. Life does not go how we expect most of the time. So when we have patience and we develop this patient endurance, our mind can remain unaffected during during any kind of agitation that might arise. And of course, patience comes as part of our meditation practice, but it can also be done in the moment itself. If you have the mindfulness in the moment to remind yourself, patience. One of the things that I've taught some people, including I have a little nephew that I helped teach meditation when he was growing up. And one of the things that I taught him was the phrase, remember to breathe. And actually at in the East Village on Thursday, somebody asked me, when I have this anger and everything come up, what do? I can't stop. I can't think about metta right then and there. I can't, my mindfulness isn't there. And I taught him to use this phrase, remember to breathe, as an aspiration, as a habit, right? If you do this, you say, when this happens, next time I'm angry, next time I'm agitated, next time I have strong aversion, remember to breathe. And you keep setting that aspiration, setting that intention. When a situation comes up, you'd be surprised. That comes to your head. And then we can practice and apply patience. We can practice metta. So this is also part of mindfulness. And so we can also practice doing our best to put metta into every interaction, everyday situations. One of the biggest things that I find shows your goodwill towards other people is to smile. Right? When you smile, you put other people at ease. And unless you have some weird maniacal smile or something like that, people think you're going to look like the Joker or something. But most of the time, when you smile, it's a way to show your goodwill to somebody else. It's a way to show that they can expect from you at least a modicum of goodwill. That it's just a very good thing to do. And what I found, even before I was a Buddhist, I remember when I was in my late teens, in high school, I had lots of depression and I hated mostly everything and myself and all this kind of stuff. And I was really, I didn't wear a lot of black. There was no emos and all that kind of stuff back then. But I was pretty dark back then. And I remember after high school, I said, you know what? That's not me. That's not me. I don't feel it's me. And one of the first tips that I was told was just smile. Even if you don't believe it, even if you don't feel it, just do it. And I was like, well, this is really stupid and corny. But I was desperate. I was like, okay, fine, I'll try it. And I started smiling. And I would look at myself in the mirror and I would smile. And then I started to notice, wow, that smile is actually changing my mind state. I noticed how that happened. And this was before I was a meditator. This was before I was a Buddhist. And I recognized just that simple thing is a gift to yourself and a gift to others. A smile. We don't, in the office, at work, wherever, on the subway, you don't, most people are, or they're looking at something, right? So, very, very rarely can you see somebody who's just smiling. I just went for a walk, and I tried to apply metta, and I tried to do some of the things that we do at Bhavana when we're on the road. I smiled at people as they drove by. I was hesitant to wave because I thought they might think I'm... One of the things that... Actually, that was another thing in terms of what I wanted to talk about, your interaction with people. At Bhavana, when we go for a walk, if you walk with Bhante J, you'll see every time there's a car that goes by, he waves. All of the people who come, that's what we say. When, walk, car goes by, wave. And what you're not just, the waving itself is goodwill, but we also practice, we say actually a Pali word, Sukhi Hotu, which means may you be happy. And so you actually practice metta for people as they go by. Now, of course, on a major interstate or in the city, it's a little different. And I was thinking, if I waved, well, I hope they, I don't know. I was hesitant. That's because I don't know the city as well as I know the country, unfortunately. But I think no matter where you are, you can practice metta. And so these very small, very little acts of kindness, of goodwill, can go a long way in making your day, changing your mind state, and changing the mind state of others. One of the stories, again, this was before I was a Buddhist, back when I worked retail and all these little jobs. I always hated being on a cash register. I always hated it, because especially, people coming and everybody's grumpy, they want their cigarettes, they want their coffee, they're on their phone, they don't want to talk to you. And I was just, But every once in a while, one person would come through. They'd look at my name tag. They'd say, "Hi, Joe, how you doing?" Joe's my English name, by the way, my legal name. "Hi, Joe, how you doing? How you doing today?" And I'm like, "What? Oh, good. How are you?" And that, maybe I was in this mindset. My mind was, thinking of somewhere else. I didn't want to, being averse, annoyed, whatever. That person taking this split second to be kind to me, to address me as a person, took that mind state right away. And for just a brief period of time, I had a clear, peaceful, calm mind. Of course, then they left, and the next person comes up, "Give me cigarettes," like that. And I'm like, "Oh, okay, now I'm back to the way I was." So that was, that is another thing I always remember. That you taking that split second, it doesn't take a lot out of your day to just be kind, just to show goodwill towards somebody. And you never know what somebody's going through. And you never know what just a short interaction, a smile, a hello, can do to somebody's day. So this is important. This is all the little things about practicing metta, about doing the whole of this Buddhist practice. Living in friendship. And these are ways that you can show friendship. These are just very few examples. What I found is that oftentimes when I'm going through my day and doing things, I'll be aware of opportunities for that. I don't necessarily go out of my way, because sometimes you go out of your way, like a happy smile, and people look at it, "What are you doing? Go away!" Like all these kind of things. Sometimes you have to do it with wisdom. You have to understand when is a good time to do that, if you're going to do that with an interaction with another person. But it's important to keep that in mind. That is a mindfulness. Keep that in mind as you're going through your day. And this way, not only does this give you the chance to help others, but it gives you the chance to keep maintaining a mind state of goodwill. Keep maintaining a mind state of calm. And that will pay dividends when you go to sit down and do your mindfulness meditation or anapanasati, whatever practice you normally do. Because you will have kept that ember alive. And so you can just go sit down. You're not worried. You don't have to sit there and fight and try to release all kinds of aversive and angry mind states, at that point, because you've already put in the work the whole day. So you don't have to waste time, as it were, once you sit down. And so one of the things that, in terms of practicing these kind of thoughts, these kind of metta practices, I suggest doing it when the first thing that you wake up. When you wake up, practice some kind of metta. Whatever works for you. Words, visuals, thoughts, whatever works. As soon as you wake up, do it. Start your day off well. When you go to bed, the last thing you do, make your last thoughts, your last conscious thoughts before sleep, thoughts of goodwill. And of course, we'll go through various different situations. With the family. I see some people laughing. How do we practice metta with family members? It's not easy. Even we all don't have perfect families. Nobody has perfect families. Some of us have families that get along better than others. But we can always keep in mind in our interactions with our family members, mind of goodwill, mind of compassion. Family members hurt us. Family members go out of their way to help us. Family members do everything that normal human beings do. Just because they're attached to us by genetics and blood and birth doesn't mean they're not human. So it behooves us to do our best to maintain these thoughts of goodwill. Especially, it's really hard if you live with people. It's a lot harder to practice metta sometimes. Sometimes it's easier to, you visit and then, you can practice metta, and then you go to your own houses and then you don't have to worry about it. And then once you move in together, it's like, this person. All kinds of agitation and aversion can arise. That's where patience comes in. That's where compassion comes in. Now, as I've said a couple times before, this doesn't mean that you should allow yourself to be a doorstop, allow yourself to be abused, allow yourself to just sit there and take whatever abuse that somebody can send to you. But the best thing to do is to act, not to react. And by that I mean, somebody does something bad to us, usually anger arises, and we go with the flow of that anger, and then that is reacting. Acting is, this is happening to us, maintaining mindfulness, goodwill. Okay, what do I do? You are making a decision then with a calm, clear head, as opposed to a head that is filled and clouded with anger and aversion. And then it's very common, right? Family fights. Everybody, yells and says things and all kinds of stuff. And at the end, they're like, "Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean it. This and that." And I don't know. Actually, that brings up some thoughts about, because in my past and in my previous, with families and stuff, when I saw fights, and it's like, people in that mind state, they just they're defensive, and they want to defend themselves and attack the other person. And so stuff that they normally wouldn't say with a calm, clear mind comes out. And then later they realize, that was really crappy of me to say that. I shouldn't have done that. and then they say, "Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean it." Technically, they did mean it at the time, but they were not mindful. They were angry. And so to avoid that, because that doesn't go away. Just saying, "Oh, I didn't mean to say that," people still keep that in their mind. And that becomes fuel for further agitation and further aversion. So we do our best to work with family members in a way that breeds goodwill, kindness, and compassion. And if we need to, we take action. We're not doorstops. And we also check our action to make sure that we are not enabling bad behavior as well. Enabling bad behavior is actually not goodwill. It's actually, you can have good intentions, but if you enable bad behavior, you're not helping the person. In the long run, you're actually hurting the person. So, at work, we go to work, and we're dealing with people who we don't, maybe we don't know them very well. They're not family, they're not friends. So we're trying to basically get along at work and do the job, do the work that needs to be done so that we can go home. And there's a few things you can do at work. One of the things I always liked doing at work was when sitting at my desk, just emanating metta to my coworkers. Actually, you could do that with your family too. If you're in your room, or whatever, or wherever you are, and there's family members in the same house or whatever, just emanate metta, just to help you. And again, whether that changes them or not, you don't know. It doesn't matter. It's for your own mind, so that you can always maintain this mindfulness, this clear, calm mind of goodwill. And having compassion for your coworkers, trying to understand where they're coming from. They come in, you have a project that you have to do with other people, or whatever, a meeting. One person comes in, they look like they're angry, they look like they're sad, whatever. In terms of having the wisdom to know what to do in that situation, I wouldn't necessarily just automatically go up and say, "Oh, is everything okay? How are you doing?" All these kind of things. I think that takes a little bit of knowing the person a little bit more, or at least knowing how they're going to react to that. So one of the things to keep in mind is, while we're doing these acts of goodwill, is to make sure that we're doing it with mindfulness, so that we understand the results of our intentions, the results of our actions. We might do something with intentions of goodwill, and it might turn out to be really, a thing that harms others, or things that makes people's, mind states worse. We don't know. So, at work, goodwill, compassion for your coworkers, patience for your coworkers, kindness. And driving. I don't know, if you guys do much driving at all. I grew up in the suburbs, so I drove, and one of the things that actually was the biggest agitation for people I knew was driving. Driving in New Jersey, it's almost like a joke. You drive in New Jersey? And so having that patience and compassion for the people around you, stuck in traffic, practice giving metta to yourself, compassion for yourself, but also metta and compassion for everybody else stuck in the same predicament as you. I think that's actually an important thing to develop and to cultivate, that understanding that even though this person in the next house or in the next car or whatever might have very different life experiences from you, in many ways they have the same life experiences as you. You know, they might have different aspects of mind that are different than you, but in general, all of us have very similar ways our minds work. Right? So you can use that to develop compassion in these situations. And again, one of Bhante Silananda in Bhavana, every time he gets to tell a story about how he practiced metta when he was young, it always gives me a warm heart, because it's always so innocent in a way. He tells a story about how when he was on the bus, and when he was a young monk in Sri Lanka, and every car the bus passed, he would give metta to them and say kind words in his head and all these kind of things. And I thought, that's a good thing. That's something that I want to aspire to. So, while you're on the bus, while you're on the train, whatever, you could look at the news, or you could look at who's posting what on Facebook. And most likely, especially these days, those activities are not going to lead you to have a mind of goodwill. So, put that down. Put it down. Just even, have the mindfulness to just put it down. And even if it's just for a minute or two, everybody on the train, everybody in traffic, everybody around you, spread your goodwill, spread your metta, spread your compassion. These are ways that you can think about in all aspects of your life. And it's just like any other habit. The more you do it, the more you remember to do it. So if you really put the effort into trying your best to, in every situation, doing something good, doing something kind, with a mind of goodwill, opening doors for people, whatever, doing all these little things. You see an opportunity, take it. Even if the person gives you the middle finger or doesn't say thank you, that doesn't diminish the good act that you did. It doesn't. An act of goodwill is never diminished by the response of the person you're giving the goodwill to, because you have no control over their response to your goodwill. And making expectations actually is causing you to suffer. It's not going to cause them to suffer. So you give your goodwill, you give of yourself without any expectations. That's not only practicing metta, that's practicing renunciation. That's practicing letting go. It's not just about money and food and material items. It's about expectations as well. If you everything that you can do, you practice letting go in your mind. Okay, so let's talk about the Noble Eightfold Path. I had the wonderful luck to be in on a Q&A with Bhante J, where somebody asked, where does metta fit into the teachings? Where does metta fit into the Noble Eightfold Path? And it was like there's lots of Buddhist lists, right? There's lots of 7 factors of enlightenment, the Noble Eightfold Path, this, 8 this, 5 that. And so they were like, well, where is metta? And his answer was an answer that I'm going to use for as long as I do this. And the answer was, metta is everywhere in the practice. It permeates and suffuses the practice. It doesn't have to be part of any list, because it's part of all of the lists. So that is metta. Now, let's go through in a way to try to prove it to you, to try to show you what I mean by this. We'll go briefly through the Noble Eightfold Path. I'm sure everybody here probably at least knows the very basics of what that is.
Don't assume.
Okay. When I assuming mean I'm not going to spend 40 minutes explaining just the Noble Eightfold Path. But yeah. Okay. So, the first part of the Noble Eightfold Path. Well, actually, you know what? I like to start always with the Four Noble Truths in this, because it all connects anyway. The Four Noble Truths, right? The elephant's footprint. Have you heard the elephant's footprint? That simile? Just as all of the footprints of land mammals, land animals can fit within the footprint of the elephant, so too can all of the teachings of Dhamma fit within the Four Noble Truths. That's the simile of the elephant's footprint. So it all fits together. And of course we know the first noble truth is the noble truth of dukkha. Suffering, dissatisfaction, unsatisfactoriness, whatever you want to translate it as. That's a whole other talk. The second is the noble truth of the origin of dukkha, which, as we know, is our tanha, our craving, our thirst. Third, I know what it is. I'm trying to remember the exact words. The noble truth of the cessation of dukkha. There we go. And of course that is nibbana, nirvana. And the fourth is the way leading to the cessation of dukkha. And that is the Noble Eightfold Path. So the importance of the Noble Eightfold Path is it is our practice. It is the way. It is what we put into practice every day to end our suffering. So this is, I like to think of it as it's a package deal that the Buddha, it's almost like I have this vision of like there's like those infomercials on TV. And it's like everything together for $19.95 or something like that. The Buddha's like, see this big wheel, this Dhammacakka, this wheel, this Noble Eightfold Path. Follow this. This is the way to do it. And so this is why I love the Noble Eightfold Path so much, because it's really, other religions, other teachers, other swamis and gurus and all that stuff, they tell you what to do, but oftentimes they don't tell you how to do it. The Buddha told us how to do it. The Buddha showed us how to do it. With metta, with everything. So, the Noble Eightfold Path. First, right view or right understanding. Right? Obviously, in the grand scheme of things, right view is fully understanding the Four Noble Truths. Well, again, I don't believe any of us are arahants here, so we don't fully understand the Four Noble Truths with our experience just yet. But we have to start somewhere. Just to get to the point where you want to practice meditation and you want to learn the teachings of the Buddha, you have some semblance of right view and right understanding right there. Or else you wouldn't even want to bother with it. If you're thinking, well, this is stupid, I'm not going to do this. What is it going to do? What is it going to benefit me? Right? So that's, and just the same thing with the metta. You came to this, maybe you knew a little bit about metta, maybe you knew a lot about metta, maybe you practiced it before, maybe you haven't. But you probably thought, or at least maybe I hope you thought, that, hey, the Buddha taught this might be of benefit to me in my life. So let's go spend a weekend in Far Rockaway and see what they talk about. So, right understanding, right view. And of course, second one, right intention. There's 3 aspects to that right intention. And I went over them yesterday during the Q&A, actually. First one is renunciation, as opposed to covetousness, greed, clinging. I want it, I want more of it, I don't want anybody to take it from me. So practicing letting go, renunciation. That is right intention. Practicing goodwill instead of ill will. It's right there in right intention. Plain as day. Metta is right there in the words of the Noble Eightfold Path. You don't even have to try to extrapolate it, that, at least from right intention. Practicing non-harming, or practicing harmlessness as opposed to cruelty. So this is practicing compassion as opposed to cruelty. So this is talking about how we set up the practice for our mind, developing letting go, developing goodwill, and developing thoughts of compassion, thoughts of non-cruelty. And of course, if you're greedy and covetousness, and it's like, this is my money, this is my thing, nobody else gets it, nobody else deserves it. Can you practice letting go? Can you practice compassion? Somebody's, maybe they're poor or whatever, whatever the situation is, maybe you can help somebody. But no, I don't want to lose this. This is mine, right? So these three mind states actually work together in that regard, right? You can't. It's hard to have one without the others, and you practice them all three to develop this right intention. So right speech. Right speech, the Buddha spoke about in main 4 aspects of right speech. Not to lie, not to use divisive speech, not to use abusive speech or harmful speech, and not to use idle speech or gossip. The Pali word for that is an interesting word. It's called sampapalapa. And I've heard people say when they talk about sampapalapa blah 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 blah. So that's sampapalapa. And so, we in our practice, we practice if somebody says something bad to us, if somebody harms us in that in some way, we practice generating compassion, generating goodwill, and trying to be unaffected by that, because we know that it can be harmful. But even though we know sticks and stones may break our bones, but words will never hurt us, or words are wind, or whatever, we say that. Words still harm. People take offense to words. Words can be, just like it, words can be divisive. What Buddha's, when he's talking about divisive speech, what is that? Going from one to one side and talking bad about the other, and going to the other and talking bad about the other to try to divide people. Abusive speech, talking harshly and harmfully towards other people. Idle speech. Did you hear about this person? Or what are they? I guess they call it water cooler speech at the office. Everybody gets around the water cooler and starts gossiping about who's dating who and who did what to who and all these kind of things. Which is a social event. It might have very, very little benefit, but it can also have a lot of harm. And it's not really helping in that regard. It's not really leading you onwards towards any kind of skillfulness. So instead, when we practice metta, implementing metta into our speech, we practice speaking truthfully. We practice speaking with a mind of goodwill. We practice speaking only that would be beneficial to others, only what will be endearing to others. And there's a wonderful, there's a couple things about right speech where the Buddha gives a list of what kind of speech and what when you should say it and when you shouldn't say it. And what always struck me is that and the Buddha is explaining to himself, when the Tathagata, that's the word for himself, when the Tathagata knows that speech is factual, true, agreeable, beneficial, all of these positive things, he still knows the right time to use these words. So even if your speech is full of goodwill and metta, timing is important as well. Knowing the right time is important. So that's right speech. Right action. Right action actually coincides. At the introduction, I was going to talk a little bit about the precepts, but I'm going to talk about them in the next section. But right action encompasses 3 of the 5 precepts, right? Non-harming, practicing not harming beings, not killing beings. Actually, the Pali word I believe is slaying, or at least that's one of the translations, right? Not to slay.
Atipata literally means to make them fall down.
To make them fall down.
So it's a euphemism.
Yeah. So we have, not harming beings, not stealing, and no sexual misconduct. So let's see why if we avoid these, how is this metta? Right? Obviously, if we are abiding in goodwill, we don't want to harm anybody. It's simple as that. If we have a mind of compassion and goodwill, there's no room in our mind, no desire to want to lash out and harm somebody. Okay? There's no desire to want to, if we have goodwill, if we're practicing renunciation, letting go, there's no desire to want to take things that don't belong to us. There's no desire to want to engage in any kind of sexual activity that is harmful to yourself, to other people, to society. The sexual misconduct is basically the Buddha describes sexual misconduct as sex with a person who is married, somebody who is engaged, somebody who's like a monk or a nun, somebody who is under the protection of their family, so minors. So basically all of these kind of activities that you can see can be harmful to people, but also to think about 2,600 years ago in small villages, all these kind of activities, the harm that they could do to society, the group of people in there as well. So this is why the Buddha is including this sexual misconduct in that. And so we practice metta by avoiding these activities as well. And we practice our goodwill. Because we know that in engaging in these activities, these wrong actions, will lead to our harm and to the harm of others. And if we're practicing goodwill, we don't want to harm others. We want to practice doing actions, performing actions that are for the benefit of ourselves and benefit of others. So right livelihood. Next one, right livelihood. Often translated, or often just translated, explained as the job that you do. The job that you do, trying to work at a job that is beneficial to others and beneficial to yourself, or at the very least is not harmful to others and not harmful to yourself. But when I studied the Pali word and the different meanings of it, what I got out of right livelihood actually is it goes beyond that. It's about literally how you live your life as well. Your job, your career is part of how you live your life. What is your livelihood in this life? What do you do? Not only just what you get paid for, but what you do in this life. How do you live? Do you live by principles? Following the Noble Eightfold Path is living by a set of principles. It's training a set of principles. So living this right livelihood is living your life as a gift, not only for yourself, but a gift for all beings. for all of us. And when you live your life as a gift for all of us, you won't have regrets. You know that what you're doing is a good thing, a beneficial thing, and you can be happy about that. And that happiness and that peace of mind can help you to, what did I say when I read that first little sutta quote? Make it your vehicle, right? The Buddha said for us to make metta our vehicle. This can be your vehicle that helps you go all the way to freedom. Being able to have a calm, clear mind allows you to, like Bhante was talking about the jhanas and these kind of things yesterday during asking the questions. That mind allows you to see more clearly, and you develop insight. A basis of the development of insight is that calm, clear mind. And when you develop insight, you move towards freedom. Okay, so let's see the livelihood. So the next one, right effort. I'm definitely taking a little bit longer than I thought I was going to take on that. I tend to do this when I talk about the Noble Eightfold Path. So, but you know what? I'm going to encompass right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration all together.
What's the hurt? You've got till 4 o'clock.
Questions? That's right. So, because right mindfulness, right effort, and right concentration actually go together. The Noble Eightfold Path is broken up into 3 sections: Sila, Samadhi, and Panya. And so right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration fall under Samadhi. Samadhi, whose definition is debated, but basically Samadhi is deep states of calm and tranquility. Jhanas are Samadhi. So when we do this, right, when we practice, what is right effort? Simply put, right effort is training your mind, practicing, going against your habitual tendencies, and developing positive, skillful tendencies. So if you have mind states, if you have underlying habits, underlying unskillful tendencies in your mind, you want to abandon them. If unskillful, harmful mind states arise, you don't want to let them stay. You don't want to abide in them. Skillful mind states that you already have, skillful activities, skillful habits that you already use and abide in, you want to maintain that. You don't want to lose those. And skillful mind states, habits, habitual tendencies that arise, you want to take those in, and you want to continue, you want to make that a part of your practice. So that's right effort. And as you can see, that pretty much can cover every action that we're doing. Practicing metta, practicing concentration, practicing mindfulness. We are continuously making this habitual mind training. This is our effort to do this. And when we practice right mindfulness and right concentration, when we develop a mind that's calm and tranquil, then we are more able to be mindful of any situation that we're in. We're more able to develop insight by being able to see more clearly. If we're trying to see the deepest states of our mind, and we're thinking about, I was trying to think of whatever the biggest singer is, or whatever, Adele or whoever. If we're thinking about these songs and this, football team or that or this or whatever, you're not going to get anywhere, because every second your mind wants to bounce like ping pong balls, or like a pinball machine. It's going all over from thoughts to thoughts. But when we are able to develop this calm, tranquil mind, where the thoughts subside and we have this peace and quiet and tranquility, then we can start to look at our mind, look at our intentions, and see things in a way that we couldn't before, because our mind was too clouded and our mind was too busy to do that. And when we do this, it makes it a lot easier for us to abide in goodwill for other beings, because we don't have to fight through all of the normal clutter and gunk and cloudiness that's in our minds already. Our mind's clear. We see doing this is stupid. It's doing this action is going to not lead to my benefit. It's going to lead to my harm, and it's going to lead to somebody else's harm. So why would I want to do it? I'd rather just maintain my calm and peace by maintaining my practice of goodwill, because I have seen with my own experience that this will lead to my benefit and the benefit of others. So that's the Noble Eightfold Path. And that is where Metta suffuses and pervades the Noble Eightfold Path. So the next section, I'm going to start off with the benefits of Metta by the Buddha himself. The Buddha in the Metta Sangsa Sutta, or the Metta Sutta. I read that actually it's named differently depending on which Pali you're reading from. The Buddha gives 11 benefits. The first 3 are: you sleep in comfort, wake in comfort, see no evil dreams. Anybody have no nightmares and slept very well last night? No? The first benefits of Metta. And actually this is a good segue into exactly what I was just talking about. You go to bed with a mind of goodwill, a mind that's not cluttered with all kinds of thoughts about various different things and all kinds of ill will, which ill will loves to basically not shut up. It basically likes to just be like a narrative that just runs like a broken record in your head, especially if it's towards a specific person or a specific event, specific whatever. And when you go to bed with a mind like that, what can you expect? When you go to bed with a mind that practices metta, you can expect calm, quiet, peace, and good sleep. So those are the first 3 of those 11 benefits. The next 3 are dear to human beings. You're dear to human beings. You're dear to non-human beings. And the devas protect you. So, what does this mean? You're dear to human beings and you're dear to non-human beings. When people who are in your life, somebody who's in your life who's not very negative or very agitated or very angry, what do you feel about this kind of person? It's like, oh, wow, I can be around this person and I don't have to deal with all this and that and all these kind of things. Right? When you practice metta, when you abide with goodwill, you become dear to people. Right? Think about famous people who did things and who are known for their goodwill and their nonviolence and the good things that they did in their life. Everybody reveres people like that because we see the benefit. Even though we might not be able to abide with a mind like that, we still see the benefit in that. And we want to be around those people. It's just like I was talking about, if you ever have the experience to be around somebody who just totally exudes metta, it's an amazing experience. And this person is such a benefit to you that you want to, they're dear to you. You want to protect them. You want to help them. You know, if they were to come to any harm, you wouldn't want that. Right? So this is what it means by you're dear to human beings. People respect you. People like you. People see that what you're doing is beneficial. And they want to help you. dear to non-human beings. That's a little different. That's an interesting one. I guess one story I'll say is, going back to my career days, when I would go into a house and I would be, with little kids or animals or whatever, and I would go into a house, I didn't know what I was expecting. I started getting lots of, that's really weird. My kid just doesn't walk up to strangers. Or my dog usually is not so friendly with people. And I thought to myself, what's going on? And I realized, young children and animals, they can sense things that we either can't or that we are not attuned to anymore. If you have pets, if you have animals, you can see that. And I'm not going to go into any specifics about how this works or what it does. I don't know. But in my own experience, I can tell that animals and young children tend to, when it comes to people, it's like they have a sense. And I've met people who will say, my pet knows who's a good person and who's not. I don't know. I don't know. But it's something that's made me, in my own experience, in my own practice, go, maybe. And of course, when we talk about non-humans, we're also talking, in the Buddhist perspective, we're talking about devas and various beings and stuff like that, which is the next one. Devas protect. And that's obviously led to there being this kind of concept of, in Buddhism, being very similar to Catholicism, having a guardian angel. In Buddhism, you have a guardian deva. Like devas protect people who are virtuous and good practitioners and stuff like that. So that's what the Buddha says as a benefit. So the next one, fire, poison, and sword cannot touch them. It's probably best not to think of that as literal. Bhante J actually uses that as greed, hatred, and delusion, the three roots. So basically, if you practice metta, greed, hatred, and delusion can't touch you. I tend to, when I think about this, there's a wonderful sutta where the Buddha uses a simile about salt. And it's about good deeds and bad deeds. So if you're somebody who does a lot of good deeds, and every once in a while you do something bad, it's like, so the simile goes like this. If you put salt in a cup, and you put salt in a river, right? Salt in the cup will make the water salty, but salt in a huge river will not. So just as the more good deeds you do, the less likely bad deeds are able to take hold. Bad things, bad situations are able to take hold. And so the way I kind of look at it is when you practice metta, when you live a life like this, I think you're less likely just to come to harm just by your actions. That doesn't mean that literally I feel like you're going to be like Superman if somebody's going to come up to you with a gun or a sword and just it's going to be like this. But I feel that doing this practice makes you less likely, because you are dear to people, it makes you less likely to come to harm. Not perfectly unlikely to come to harm. But again, I mentioned about all the houses I had been in over 10 years and not feeling unsafe, and the fact that I could have been killed at any time, these kind of things. So when I talk about this, I talk it from my own experience. You can take that as valid as you want to or not. But so that's that. So that's 7. The last couple, concentration comes quickly. We already spoke about that. A mind of calm and peace. Concentrate. It's very easy to concentrate because your mind is not cluttered with all ill will and all kinds of stuff. Your continence is serene. that means that you glow, you're bright, and again, that fits with the people who are practice metta. That feeling that you get around them, you see them. This is they just, their countenance, their facial features, their expression, very peaceful, very calm, very bright. And so the last two are, if you die, you won't die confused in mind. So your mind won't be confused because you're having a calm, peaceful mind. And the last one is, if you don't become awakened in this life, you'll go to the Brahma world. So you go to the highest heavens, which is, I mentioned that a little bit yesterday, one of the reasons why it's called the Brahma Viharas is because practicing these is like your mind being in heaven, but also in the Buddhist tradition, if you don't become awakened, just practicing these can lead to a rebirth in those places as well. And so just very quickly, following the 5 precepts is a gift to, the Buddha calls 5 precepts 5 faultless gifts to the world. So when you follow the precepts, you are giving a gift to yourself and giving a gift to others. And one last sutta in this section, there's a sutta called Buy a Snake. And in this sutta, a monk dies, gets bit by a snake and dies. And the monks go to the Buddha and say, this monk got bit by a snake and he died. And the Buddha said, well, I can assure you that if he was giving metta to the snakes, he wouldn't have died. And so there's a wonderful, word of metta practice that the Buddha teaches in this. He teaches the monks to give metta to the snakes and to the beings. And how it goes is, it goes like this. I have metta for those with no feet. I have metta for those with 2 feet. I have metta for those with 4 feet. I have metta for those with many feet. May those with no feet not harm me. May those with 2 feet not harm me. May those with 4 feet not harm me. May those with many feet not harm me. First time I heard this, I'm like, that's not in the suttas. Get out of here. Actually, it is in the suttas. It's directly what the Buddha says. And if you're in the middle of the woods, it might be a little bit more useful than perhaps here. I don't think you're worried about bears and stuff coming to you in your house here. But, there's lots of beings. And practicing, you can practice this metta, this way of metta in that regard. Okay. So the simile of the saw. I'm going through this. I'm not too late, which is good. Just a little. We will be done pretty soon, thankfully. So simile of the saw. It begins with a monk called Malaya Paguna. And Malaya Paguna is, he has grown too attached to other monastics. And when people criticize those other monastics, he gets really angry, and he doesn't like it, and he lashes out. And so the Buddha instructs him in this way. He says, when you see that another person is, that these people are criticized or whatever is happening to them, you train thus. Our minds shall be unaffected, and we shall utter no evil words. We shall abide compassionate for their welfare. And starting with them, we shall pervade the entire world with a mind imbued with loving-friendliness. Above, below, and all around, unobstructed, without ill will or hatred. So basically it's the same phrase that we heard before, but implemented in just a little bit of a different way. So if somebody's doing something harmful, you practice metta for them. You practice understanding for them. And and most of all, you practice maintaining a mind of clear and calm goodwill. It's really hard, right? So somebody, family members, friends, spouse, whatever, partner, somebody goes up to them and starts yelling at them and criticizing them. What do we want to do? Jump right in the fray and all these kind of things. Or we don't even think about it. Our mind instantly goes into, this person, how could they be doing this? And we just go right into it. And then it just turns into a brawl and it gets worse. So the Buddha is training us, even in these really hard situations, we want to train to maintain a mind of goodwill and maintain mindfulness. Because even in a really hard situation, even when we have to act, we can act with a mind of goodwill, and we can act in a much more skillful way if we have a clear mind and able to assess the situation and understand the consequences of our actions and what we can do to make that action. And so the Buddha tells a story of the maid Kali. And this maid works for a rich woman of the town, and the woman that says she has a very good reputation. She's very kind and meek and gentle and humble. And so Kali says, you know what? Is she really kind and meek and gentle and humble? Or is it just outward in that regard? So let's test her. So basically, she decides to wake up late the next morning and avoid her duties. And of course, what happens? The mistress gets angry. She says, Why did you wake up late? And Kali says, no reason. No reason? And she gets angry and she walks away. So Kali's like, oh, maybe there is something there. Suppose I test my lady further. So the next day, she wakes up even later. Kali, why are you waking up late? No reason. And then the mistress yells and curses at her. Kali again. She's a glutton for punishment. She says, okay, let's test her further. The next day, wakes up even later. Kali, why did you wake up late? No reason. Mistress takes a rolling pin and bashes her over the head. And so Kali goes out and says to everybody, oh, look at this. You thought she was all kind and peaceful and meek. Look at what she's done to me. And so the Buddha's making a point there in that it's very easy to look like we're kind and meek and peaceful until something happens, and then that's when we really know if we're really kind and meek and peaceful, right? If nobody's bothering us, if nobody's agitating us, well, I'm not an angry person. I'm so kind and nice. Somebody gives you the middle finger, and it comes out, right? So the Buddha is pointing to us and saying, be careful of this, be aware of this. And so he ends with a simile. It's a very famous simile. It says, even if bandits were to take you and to savagely with a two-handed saw sever you limb from limb, anyone who would develop a mind of hate is not doing my teaching. It's pretty harsh, right? It is. That's pretty like, whoa! Like I said, the Buddha does not play when it comes to anger and ill will. Even in this situation. And he says, in this situation you should train yourself thus. My mind shall remain unaffected, and I shall utter no evil words. I shall abide compassionate for their well-being, and starting with them, I shall imbue the whole world with a mind of limitless goodwill. So even when you're being sawed in half, the Buddha says, this is how you should train. It's not impossible. I don't believe it's impossible. I think it just takes a lot of training and a lot of practice. And I don't believe it's impossible because I trust the Buddha in it. And I feel that as you practice and you start to see little by little its effect on you and its benefit on you, you can think, well, maybe if I can follow this to its end. Maybe not now, I'm not there yet, but if I practice this, I can get there. And it's an ideal. If none of us knows if we're really able to do something like that. That's a very, very, very hard thing that most people, when they think about that, it's like, that's silly, it's ridiculous. But the Buddha, oftentimes when he gives these kind of similes, it's not necessarily to be taken literally, but to be taken as an ideal to strive for. And he does this because he realizes that the danger of a mind of ill will, the danger of a mind of hatred, not only in this life, but also in future lives. The danger of abiding in this mind state is worse than death to him. So to him, it's better if you die with a mind of peace, it's better than to live with a mind of hate. Because for your long-term benefit, it's better that you have that mind of peace. Okay, and so we're going to have closing after the questions. I guess that we're going to have a little closing thing, but just one more quick reminder: make the practice your own. What I wanted to do for this retreat was to not teach you what to think and what to do, but how to do it. To give you examples and to give you ideas as to how you can do this practice. The Buddha says to be a lamp unto ourselves, right? The Buddha says that nobody can do this for us. We have to do it for us. This is our own practice. We have teachers and kalyanamitas and people who are further down the path than us that we can speak to for advice and these kind of things. But they're not in your mind. They can't tell you this is exactly what you need to do. You have to take responsibility for your own practice, and you make this practice your own. And so it's very easy with metta, in this regard, because you're dealing with words and visuals, and that is developing a feeling. So the words and visuals can be anything that works for you. Like I said, just very briefly in my own practice, I'm much more visual than I am words. So I don't use a lot of words. And that's fine. I can still develop that feeling just visually. I also like to do what I call metta to the stars. At Bhavana, I'll go out at night and you can see hundreds of stars. You can't see thousands. It's not that deep into the middle of nowhere. But you can look up, and for me, to practice metta under the stars, to give my metta to anybody in these stars that might be there, that really connects with me. That really bolsters my metta. It might not for you. You find what works for you. I know Bhante Analayo, who his main practice is metta. He says that he starts by developing thoughts and imagining like little rabbits and bunnies. So something like that's a little cute that he uses to develop the feeling. Again, it's not necessarily about the words and the visuals. It's about the feeling, and it's about the mind state. And if you get to the point where it's hard to get the feeling, watch your mind state. Sometimes the feeling is impermanent. So you might be blissed out and find, I found the metta feeling. And then 4 months later, the feeling goes away. And you're practicing metta. Come on, feeling, where are you? Get back, get back. You're causing yourself suffering. because you're expecting something that came for a time and it went away. Maybe it'll come back again. This is why you practice, and you continuously track and adjust in your practice. You know, what is working, what is not working. Don't be afraid to try new things. But also, don't just keep trying things to the point where you don't try anything too deeply and you become like a spiritual window shopper. You don't want to do that either. So, find what works for you. Find what the wording, visuals, do what works for you. Do what practice works for you. Again, like I said, you know, I given you a lot of information from the Nikayas. I've given you practices from the Nikayas. That's not all the metta practices there are. You know, people use like the giving metta to individuals and stuff like that. These various things. If that works for you, continue to do that. Do what works for you. Try that. Try this. You know, I don't want to come across as the Buddha says this, so this is exactly what you should do. Now, I want to give you these tools, these ideas for you to develop in your own practice. And this practice is meant to be lived. You always have a choice. You can abide in goodwill, or you can abide in ill will. You can work with your mind, or you can let it just be wild. Right? You always have a choice, even if you don't realize it. It's not easy. It's not easy at all. And you know, the practice will take time, but it brings benefits. Continue to do it. Don't give up. Find what works for you and keep doing it. And then one day, maybe you'll be able to live up to the simile of the soul. One day, maybe you'll be able to live up to one of my favorite Dhammapada quotes. Happily we live, friendly amidst the hostile. Amidst hostile people we live, free of hatred. I think it's possible. So I wish this for all of us.
They tested Tibetan monks when they were tortured by the Chinese.
Oh yeah?
Yeah, and they were able to be psychologically, have that well-being and that healthy ego. So it's possible.
Good.